Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach to those keeping Passover and the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which just started in my area. So today I'm going to address a question which is very important. It seems to me that controversy and controversial beliefs never cease. They never will stop until Yeshua returns. We've had contentions about whether the resurrection is real, whether it happened. There were divisions regarding that in the scriptures. There are two particularly dangerous teachings, beliefs that are being spread right now, and I'm going to address the second one. The first one is that Jesus Christ is the Father. That's a very dangerous belief. The second one I'm going to address in this video, and it just is sneaking up like out of nowhere, it seems, which is, did Jesus Christ eat leavened bread during the Passover, and did his disciples eat leavened bread during the week of the Feast of Unleavened Bread? Of all weeks to do that, eating that is a very, that's a blatant disregard of the law, if they actually did that. So according to the video I watched here on the channel Ancient Path New Moon by Rivka Biederman, who I greatly respect and agree with a lot of her viewpoints in terms of the calendar and the 7 species and determining the new year, when is the start of the holy sacred year. I agree with her in that. However, my disagreement, and I respectfully disagree with her on this topic. So I'm just going to read what I just wrote on her comment section. I put here, Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach. Rivka, you are correct in stating that Passover night was, and is to be a watch to be kept. The Septuagint states explicitly this in Exodus 12, verse 42. It is a watch to be kept to Yah, so that he should bring them, the children of Israel, out of the land of Mizraim. That very night is a watch kept to Yah. So it's not just a night to be observed, it is literally a night watch to be kept, so that it should be to all the children of Israel to their generations. And this watch, whether you go by the Roman reckoning or the Hebrew reckoning, it starts at 6 p.m. all across the board, and it ends around 6 a.m. And she said it's around Boker, which is when the sun starts to appear, the sunlight. And, 6 a.m. is right around that time anyhow. But, yeah, that would be a more honest way to do that, is when you start seeing the sun coming up. And that's not easy. I did that last night. I stayed awake 6 p.m. to actually 8 a.m. So I was up well into the sunrise. But that's not easy. I don't know if I could do that into my 80s. I might fall asleep, 3 a.m. or earlier. So regarding artos, and this is what she spoke about in this video, artos, she understands this Greek word meaning leavened bread, bread with yeast in it, bread with a leavening agent. I respectfully disagree. The implications of this are serious. They're dire. This would mean that the Messiah, Yeshoshua HaMashiach, had sinned. That means he had sinned if he ate leavened bread on Passover. And he would therefore be disqualified and would be unacceptable to be offered as the sinless Lamb of Elohim, of Yah. Since the command, it is explicit, was for no leaven to be consumed or found from the 14th to the 21st. Exodus 12, verses 18 to 20, it says here, the Septuagint, beginning the 14th day of the first month, you shall eat unleavened bread from evening till the 21st of the month. So that's when you should be eating it, till evening. 7 days, so for the 7 days of the feast, leaven shall not be found in your houses. So I suppose the 14th day would be the last day where you can have leaven physically in your house, but you will not be eating it. So what's the point? Might as well just get rid of it. But I guess you have a day of grace, because it does say 7 days it shall not be found in your houses. So 7 days would be the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20, 21. So that's 7 days. So the 14th, perhaps that's where you're disposing of it. Whosoever shall eat anything leavened, that soul shall be cut off, meaning destroyed. from the congregation of Israel, both among the occupiers of the land and the original inhabitants. You shall eat nothing leavened, but in every habitation of yours you shall eat unleavened bread. So that is pretty black and white. It's clear cut. It is from the 14th to the 21st, where you shall not eat unleavened bread. I should say leavened bread, and you are eating unleavened bread during that period of time. And the following is from a writer, a commentator, Shemuel Playfair. He writes here, the Greek word for bread is artos, whether it be made with zume, which means leaven, or azuma, without leaven. So in either case, artos could mean either or. It's not explicit that it only means leavened bread or unleavened bread. Just as the Hebrew word for bread is lechem, whether it be matzah or not be matzah. In the Septuagint, for example, the unleavened bread of Passover is referred to as the arton, or artos, of affliction. In Hebrew, lechem oni. The unleavened bread offered to God in the temple was referred to as the bread of presentation, lechem hapanim, or in Greek, arto tais prothesios, the showbread. Also, Jews who wrote in Greek, such as Philo and Josephus, referred to unleavened bread, matzah, as artos. So to say that artos is all across the board leavened is wrong. And to say it's unleavened across the board is wrong as well. It's a general term. Looking at the Strong's, artos says here 740. It could mean bread, could mean a loaf, it could mean food. Doesn't even have to mean bread, it could just mean food. So in this case, could be unleavened, it could be leavened, but as Rivka brought up in her video presentation and regarding this topic, the timeline of the Lord's Supper and the last Passover part 2 and the watch, the garden watch, she said that they will not, mention things that Jews of that day would automatically know. They wouldn't point out the obvious. So in this case, why would they need to point out that Yeshua ate unleavened bread? That's obvious. He's a Jew. He will not eat leavened bread during that time. The disciples having to point out that the artos is unleavened, that's obvious. Obviously, they wouldn't be infringing and defying that clear-cut law of God that you are not to not just not eat it, but it shouldn't even be found with you in your quarters. So that is a given as well. So they are stating, what are they stating here? Let's go back to my comment. Yeah, the watch. Okay, I'll go back to the artos. So they are stating, or I should say Shemuel states here, that artos could mean either or. So it simply because the word artos, and some people want to just grab onto this very dangerous understanding that artos means leavened bread, shows a little bit. I'm not trying to accuse her of anything, but I'm saying that if somebody were to lean towards that, I think that's something that has to be assessed in your heart to say, why do I think this way? Because that is showing a sign of compromise. That is very dangerous. We should not compromise. We should guard these commandments very carefully, be diligent. And how the Jews put up fence laws, there's nothing wrong with being very careful, but I mean, when it becomes a tradition of man, that's where it becomes dangerous. But anyhow, in regards to this section, bread, artos being automatically leavened bread, that's dangerous, because we know from the understanding of the actual word itself, it could mean unleavened bread, it could mean leavened bread, it could mean food, it doesn't even have to mean bread. But looking at the historical context of how it was used in that day by Greek Jews such as Philo and Josephus, they referred to unleavened bread as artos. And as well, the scriptures are explicit as well. in regards to the term artos being used for unleavened bread, when it does mention in Deuteronomy 16:3 the artos of affliction, or in the Hebrew again lechem oni, and then in 2 Chronicles 4:19 it also refers to unleavened bread again as artos of tais prothesios. And then in the Hebrew, you can't just assume lechem. Lechem means leavened bread. That is a very wrong assumption to make, because lechem hapanim does not mean leavened bread offered to God. It is unleavened bread. Yes, they did offer leavened bread during the Shavuot, but that's because leaven was not restricted during that time period, only during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So I wanted to make this video because this is urgent. This is not something to be trifled with. This is not something that we should be wishy-washy about or uncertain about. When I started in this walk, in this faith, back in 2000, 2001, it was so clear-cut to me that, yeah, no leaven should be eaten. And erroneously, I did believe at that time that it included, baking soda and things like that, leavening agents. But when you look at the truth of the matter, it is not only barley, leavened barley, but also leavened yeast, leavened wheat, I should say. So leavened bread all across the board, whether it's barley bread or wheat bread or what have you bread, it should not be leaven in that. And yes, she did point out there is naturally occurring yeast on grapes and such, but you don't give it the time to develop that yeast. That's why, when the Israelites had left from Egypt, they had no time for the yeast to rise. They were in haste, so that's why the bread was unleavened. So, yeah, this is such an important topic. It's not something that we can be on the fence about, because if this is true, that Jesus Christ, Yeshoshua HaMashiach, ate leavened bread on Passover, that he broke this leavened bread, this leavened loaf, and the disciples were eating leavened bread during this week of unleavened bread as well. I think it was described in the Road to Emmaus account, that that would mean he's disqualified, that he's not the real Messiah. That's what it means. And therefore we are all condemned to die. The penalty for sin has not been paid. That's what it means. That God's plan has failed. That's what it means. Because he is no longer acceptable. He sinned. There's no... I'm not mincing my words. He would have sinned. He has sinned then. But we know he has not sinned because Isaiah says so. There was no sin found in him. He committed no sin. Meaning he did not break the law. He only magnified the law. Meaning he did not eat leavened bread on Passover, because it says right here, right there in Exodus 12, 14th day of the month, you shall eat unleavened bread, beginning on the 14th. So why would Yeshua ignore this, and his disciples? Why would they ignore that? I think the problem we have in the Western mindset, or whether it's the Hebraic mindset of language, we look at the word matzo, we think crispy, crunchy crackers. But when you look at the ancient matzo, it wasn't crispy and crunchy. It was most likely closer to something like pita bread, where it was like a flat bread. And we see that a lot in the Middle Eastern kinds of breads, and even Indian bread. They have the naan and things like that. But I believe that the ancient Israeli unleavened bread is closer to a flat bread, or like a pancake, as opposed to a matzo, which is like a big cracker. I'm not saying matzos are bad. I'm just saying that when you look at the historical matzo, it's far removed from how it is in terms of its texture as we have it today. So I think that's a big mistake. That can be a pitfall, can be a trap. So that's important to clarify. So that could be related to why this artos and lechem can be misinterpreted to mean that they are both leavened, when they in fact could be either or, depending on the context and depending on our perception of, is Yeshua a lawbreaker or not? Are his disciples Torah keepers or not? And we know he was a Torah observant Jew. And not only Torah observant, he went above and beyond what was expected, fulfilling not just the physical requirements of the law, but even the spiritual requirements of the law. He magnified the law. He fully filled the law. So that's all I have for you today in terms of this topic. I wasn't even planning on doing this topic, but I thought it was important enough to warrant a video, a presentation, or at least clarifying this, because it's going to lead many to not just stumble, it's going to lead many to sin and possibly compromise their love for Elohim, their standing with Elohim and their relationship with Yah. And one thing I want to say before I close is yesterday I mentioned how staying up all night, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., it shows how serious you are. That's what I said. It shows how serious you are in terms of keeping the commandments. I think that's part of it, but it goes beyond just showing God how serious you are. It's showing Yah how much you love him. I'm doing this because I want to show you how much I love you, that I'm willing to withhold my sleep, to not sleep. And if you even go further and say, I love you so much, I'm going to die for you. You died for me on the cross, and you didn't deserve it. I deserve to die, but in return, I will give my life for you. I will lay my head on the chopping block or whatever. I'll be executed for your sake, to show you not just that I'm serious about you in this relationship, but because I love you that much. That's the way I prove my love to you, and from the heart, not just, I'm going to just prove my love. No, I'm showing you I'm for real. So that's all. Thank you very much. Shalom, Maranatha, Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach, and Maranatha. This is the Septuagint versus the Masoretic.